It gets no better, folks. It's Miami Hurricanes Live, and it gets no better with the likes of Cam Underwood from State of the U at our usual time slot, Thursday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. But we remind everyone that schedules sometimes change and interfere. That's why it's important that you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and turn on the notifications. That way you know when we're going live. But again, we try to hit the mark on Thursday nights with Cam Underwood at 7 Eastern. Cam, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Feel good, feel strong. Had a great day off from the secret day job today. Got a lot of stuff done, including stopping by to talk to you and our loyal listeners and fans and everything. So I'm doing well, man. Can't complain.
I don't know the exact dates, but I do know that next week is ACC kickoff, when the entire conference convenes and coaches and players make their way to a particular destination. If you're unfamiliar with what the conferences do, the Big 12 is currently having its media days in Dallas, I believe at Jerry's World. And then the particular teams bring a collection of players, usually 2 or 3, to the event to represent the program and kick off the season, and we'll be in the midst of that at some point next week.
Yeah, so it's the Wednesday and Thursday next week, the 21st and 22nd. As I'm looking this up, this will be in Charlotte because everything for the ACC is always in North Carolina. I don't even know why I had to scroll up on that page because duh. But yeah, so Miami obviously will have a contention going. Some conferences are doing 2 players and the coach. ACC is doing 3 players and the coach. So Manny Diaz will be there. Bubba Bolden, your starting safety, number 21, he's going to be there. Mike Harley, your 60-year senior wide receiver from Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas. And, of course, quarterback, number 1 in your hearts and number 1 in your program, De'Aaron King from Manville, Texas, will be Miami's representatives for that. And I think that that's a strong group, honestly, of guys who have done things at Miami. De'Aaron King is one of the handful best quarterbacks returning in college football. Mike Harley has really developed over time using his speed really well and kind of growing his technique and connection to the game.
That's me. Keep going.
No, it's just loud. Because I think they're calling the computer. There we go. So yeah, Mike Harley is developed. He's the guy who could be a borderline 1,000-yard receiver. Although I do think that Charleston Rambo will be ahead of him in terms of receiving yards this year. But again, he's another strong performer who has been here and done things. And so is Bubba Bolden, second team All ACC last year. Preseason should be first team All ACC. Coming back this year. So those 3 guys, along with Manny Diaz, going to ACC kickoff is a strong group for Miami. We've always, the roster has not necessarily been as deep from 1 to 85 as Alabama or anything, but Miami's always had really great representatives for the ACC kickoff events over the course of time because the top of the roster has the kind of talent that we need in Miami. And again, you're showcasing that with those guys. I do just want to say really quickly that I believe it is funny to me that Florida State is taking 2 guys who have never played a snap for them and their backup quarterback. So you have Jordan Travis, who's played snaps for them, competitive snaps for Florida State. So he's the one, but he's the backup. Then you got Mackenzie Milton, who was not going to ever play again after that catastrophic injury at UCF. He's going. And then Jeremiah Johnson, who transferred in. So you have 2 guys who've never, they're new. They've never worn the garden and gold at all. And then you got another guy who's a backup, and he had that incredible falling, stumbling pass over his shoulder that Jalen Phillips tipped and picked off in that beatdown last year, and then he had that, he was like crawling off the field because he got wrecked on that play as well. So yeah, you have 2 basically replacement level quarterbacks, and then including Mackenzie Milton, because I don't know that he's going to necessarily be who he was coming off the catastrophic injury. That's why I say that now. Okay. And then including Milton and Johnson, 2 guys who have never played a snap for Florida State, but those are the guys that you're going to put up wearing the garden and gold to be the spokespeople for Florida State University and the Seminole football team at ACC kickoff. I think that that's kind of funny. But then again, if you look at the roster, who else are you going to pick? Dante Lucas? Nah, we're good.
The reason I threw up the three fingers as soon as you went to the Florida State route in regards to representation at ACC kickoff is that, as you stated, I also, in extending to that, last night on our Florida State show, as soon as it was brought up, okay, who's going to ACC kickoff, my initial response was, those are three transfer players. Those aren't even three players that you initially signed in the program and have come through the program and contributed. And to your point, two of them have not contributed anything to date.
Right.
That's non-selection, because usually the choice is, okay, we're going to grab a combination of our best players, but also guys that have some equity in the program, that have helped build where we are right now. Our leaders are good program players, not to disparage their talent, but they've built something here. They've done something. They've represented the school and the university and the program well. And it's kind of that combination that brings us to those selections typically where the coaches go. But for this Florida State team, they take two guys that have been on campus for a couple months.
Yeah, and it's like, but again, I just typed really quickly. I'm looking at their roster. Who else are you going to bring? Emmett Rice, maybe, the linebacker? Okay, maybe.
Amari Gaynor. He's a really good player. Gaynor?
Gaynor, yeah, okay, Gaynor 33. Yeah, okay. I would have taken Gaynor. But then again, you want the curious decision for me is taking Jordan Travis, to be perfectly honest.
He's not a good quarterback.
He's not. He's not a quarterback. Put him in wide receiver, put him at slot, put him at offensive weapon and move him around a little bit. Not necessarily that he's going to be the fastest guy at a multi-positional kind of a thing, but he's not a quarterback. He can't throw the ball. And hey, that's fine for me, do that and be as you are, but when you play against Miami, then we see what happens. But that's the curious choice for me. And I guess maybe that's the one where it's like he has some equity in the program because he's actually taken snaps and gotten beaten up behind that terrible sieve of an offensive line and everything. But it's funny that you brought up that he was a transfer. I forgot that he actually signed with and went to Louisville before he came over to Florida State and everything. But yeah, that one's the curious one for me. Jeremiah Johnson come from the SEC. All right, he's going to be your transfer portal level top line player. Mackenzie Milton, yeah, he came over this year from UCF, but then again, you're 2 years removed from the last time that we saw him play, and he's still been on a Alex Smith-like rehab from a pretty catastrophic, nasty knee injury. I mean, Alex Smith was bone and leg, but so maybe not all the way there, but similar kind of a thing. So we have no idea what he's going to look like. And again, that offensive line is probably going to be very similar to what they were, maybe a little step better, but they still got a couple mango seasons till they're good along the offensive line and everything. But yeah, I find it curious that you take two quarterbacks, because it would have been one thing if you had three players and three players going to ACC kickoff. And let's hypothetically, Clemson 3 years ago, right? If there were three players going, you say, okay, look, we're going to take Kelly Bryant, we're going to take one of the defensive linemen, and we're going to take Sunshine because he's the number one recruit in America. And this is a guy who we want you to know now because he's that guy. That would be one thing. That is not a comparison to the talent at Florida State, a quarterback that they're bringing. And you know what they say, if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And I saw a couple people who were saying that Florida State's going to look at playing both of them extensively. So a full dual quarterback system between Milton and Travis this year. I would like to see that happen. Sorry, I'm talking a lot about Florida State just because I'm dunking on them over and over again. But
yeah, we will end this Florida State segment here in just a second. But I will say that in last night's Florida State show, and this is going to be a question that I'm going to pose you concerning Miami. I had not thought of it until now. I'm going to come up with, I've got a question that I'm going to pose you at some point here during the show. Because for me, for Florida State, if somebody would say to me, God Almighty would say, Mark, you can ask one question concerning Florida State football, the results of this season, and I will give you an answer. What is the most telling statistic or fact that you can ask today that will give you a read on Florida State's season? I made the statement, I posed it to our panel, and then I said, for me, it's how many games did Mackenzie Milton start and finish?
Okay.
That was my question for the Florida State. So you keep that in your back pocket for Miami in regards to if you could ask a question to have it answered from on high, that we would know the answer today concerning the season. That's not something obvious, like how many games are they going to win? Something that's going to indicate where they're headed, that gives you the best indication of how the season concluded.
Okay.
In the meantime, we're going to talk up a little recruiting, and we thank you so much for 3 super chats coming in. We will get to them in just a minute, but thank you so much for the contributions, Cam and I appreciate that. Certainly, we've got a question concerning the likes of Earl Little and Marvin Jones, and are they out of the picture?
That's the American Heritage question. Just in a different year with different names. Basically, it boils down to, over the course of history, what's going on with Miami recruiting American Heritage ever since 2010-11 when they really brought in talent. Mike Rump started coaching there as the head coach, and they turned into Heritage. Because, they had a program before, but it wasn't like this. So this is basically just a New Year specificity on what's going on with the kids from Heritage. Insert names here. I've said it before. I'm saying it again really quickly. Jacoby Spells goes to American Heritage, but was 5th or 6th or 7th on Miami's cornerback board. West Virginia liked him more right now against what they had on the board for cornerback, so he committed there. He's a Heritage kid who we let go. It's not that he's the one that got away, but all these other ones in the past have gotten away. The Wilson brothers, Marco and Quincy, Travaris McFadden, Pat Surtain, there's really just, we've gotten 2 guys from American Heritage. We got Kylian Herbert, who was a 4-star offensive lineman who's not played a snap, a meaningful snap, and he's in his 4th year with the program. Thought he could have been like a left tackle potentially of the future 2 and 3 years down the road. That's not happened. The other one's Nessa Silvera, who's going to be your starting number 1 defensive tackle at wearing number 1 on the jersey. So he's a guy we've gotten from American Heritage, and that's paid off. Brian Burns, another guy, went to Florida State. Miami missed on him. There's other guys. The list keeps going, right? So then getting back to this question with the specificity, did I not say Jermaine Johnson earlier?
You went Jeremiah a few times.
Oh, whatever. Who cares?
Yeah, I know, but you like to be accurate. So
yes, you're correct. Jermaine Johnson, not Jeremiah. My bad. Anyway, getting back to the heart of the specificity of this year's version of what's going on in American Heritage regarding Earl Little Jr. and Marvin Jones Jr. Earl Little played in Miami, obviously. If you don't know that, he played here. Wore jersey number 4, I believe. So his son has the same name. Cornerback. Very talented young gentleman, high school All-American. And, both junior and senior Littles have talked about the connection to Miami and the fact that there might not be that much love or things like that. To my view, I think that the most likely path is Earl Little Jr. going to Alabama. So I'm not going to say that he's completely off the board, but I think that that's where it's going to go. Now, if you marry that with the fact that Miami already has Kamari Rogers committed, already has, oh my God, who's the other cornerback? He just committed. Oh my goodness, my brain is failing me. The other corner.
The one, well, Kamari Rogers, Mississippi. The other one.
Now I got to go look it up because
I'll get it for you.
It's not at the forefront of my brain right now. I just wrote about it.
Know it too.
Chris Graves, from
Bishop Monroe. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got 2 already. You got Chris Graves, who's a 16-year-old rising senior. We talked about the fact that his youth is a great, great asset when most rising seniors are 18, turning 19, and might even age out, a la Josh Jobe, a la Grandpa Calvin Ridley, which we talked about. But so 16, and so those guys were 19, and then Ridley was 19 years and 9 months 3 weeks into the season, his senior year, Monarch redid their schedule. So they played 3 games and had a week 4 bye. So we had the 3 weeks of Calvin Ridley in the offense, a bye week to redo the offense without Calvin Ridley moving forward because he aged out of eligibility in the state of Florida at 19 years, 9 months. He hit Alabama's campus after his 21st or 20th birthday. Go and look that up. Compare that with Chris Graves, who's 16, about to turn 17 in his senior year. So youth is a factor there. So you have that, and you have Kamari Rogers already committed. You're looking good for Traquan Fegans from Alabaster, Alabama at the moment. If he visits this month in July when things open back up, I think it's fair to say that Traquan Fegans is going to pick Miami. That's what it looks like at this point. Things could change, but as of today, on July 15th, if he were to visit in 2 weeks, I think it's fair to expect a commitment from Traquan Fegans. He's been tweeting a lot of stuff about Miami. His family's been tweeting a lot of stuff about Miami. They've peppered in there a couple other ones, so it's not only Miami, but it's one of those timeline sleep. Okay, you know, when you like say something reckless, but it's like timeline sleep. We're all gonna, like the whole family, like mom, dad, brother, kid, all tweeting about Miami. So if you get Traquan Fegans to go along with Rogers and Graves, you're talking about 2 of the top 10 cornerbacks in Rogers, who's ranked 9th overall, and then at cornerback on the 247 composite, and then Fegans, who's ranked 10th, and he's 6'2" and an All-American, and then Graves, again, who's 6'1" with wiggle and speed and only 16 years old. If I get them 3, would I love to have Earl Little Jr. on the field? Yes. Would I love that legacy and everything continuing? Absolutely. But if I get Fegans to go along with Rogers and Graves, close it down, sign me up. I'm good. Because then you're replacing, if you're talking about missing on Little Jr., you're replacing that slot with equal or more talented guys. That's the kind of recruiting we need to have, regardless of the names. So that's about him. About Marvin Jones Jr., Miami's going to continue to push. He's one of the elite pass rushers in this class. He's one of the elite pass rushers in America. Obviously, son of Marvin Jones, whose father went to Florida State, So it's going to be a battle. You have that legacy situation going there. Plus the fact everybody and their mama wants him on their team. But I think that of the two, it's more realistic or potentially possible for Miami to get Jones Jr. as opposed to Little Jr. Because especially when you look at the fact that Miami already has 2 cornerbacks committed and trending solidly for Traquan Fegans. That's not even mentioning Nick Cole. That's not even mentioning the Henderson twins, Jakari and Damari, one of which plays corner and the other one plays safety. That's not even mentioning these other guys. So you have enough Miami-level talent, all-American level talent, blue-chip talent, where if the decision is made, Earl Little Jr., who's 5'11", versus Kamari Rogers, who's 5'11", he's better. Well, comparable. Let me not say better, but comparable. Traquan Fegans is 6'2". That's a different physical profile. Okay, I'm going to take him. Chris Graves, 6'1", 11 flat in the 100, and again, 16 years old. I'm going to be okay with that, even if I know people are going to say, well, his daddy named Earl Little. His name Earl Little. His daddy played in Miami. Why didn't the kid play in Miami? Sometimes it doesn't work out like that. But I think that in the case of Little, there is the recruiting cover for Miami to move forward without him in the class. And then with Jones, you're going to work at that. But then again, you're also having that same thing rear its head that's been the case year over year that I started this segment with about what is the struggle with Miami recruiting American heritage, especially in the fact that you have Mike Rumph, who was the head coach that brought that program up. Because before Mike Rumph, they were a 5-5, 6-4 high school team. Ryan Williams, who won a state championship with Miramar, ended up going to Miami. He transferred from American Heritage to Miramar to go to a championship level high school program because at the time American Heritage was not that. Miramar won that state championship in 2009. So the earliest you're talking about Heritage getting there is 10, which is really 11 and 12, really when they stepped up. But then you bring the architect of that high school program, Mike Rumph, because they hired him for that. You're an NFL former first-round draft pick. You played at Miami. Build our program into the championship level program that all of our other teams are. All of our academics, our choir, our band, our orchestra, all these things in American Heritage are amazing. They have a really great, incredible choir program. My God. But football is not on that level. So, Mike Rumph, we turn to you to take American Heritage football to that level. And you do that, And then you bring Mike Rumph, the architect of that, to Miami, and you've gotten one commitment of consequence from American Heritage since he's been at Miami. That's going to continue to be the point of conversation. Even if, again, I laid out clearly for you, if we go in a different direction than Earl Little Jr., that is covered. If we go in a different, or if we miss on Marvin Jones Jr., you can still recruit defensive ends because there's more than you can shake a stick at right now. But again, in that way where we got Malik Curtis from Bishop Verot and went back this year and got the All-American or the blue chip guy, because Malik Curtis was a 3-star. You go back to Bishop Verot this year and get a 4-star in Chris Graves. Why? We've been there. You see, you can trust us, all these kind of things. At American Heritage, that has to be a point of conversation. And mine is going to go back there for 2023's recruiting class. Why? Number 1 wide receiver in America, Brandon Ennis, plays there. Santana Fleming transferred from there, from Carroll City there. Another blue chip wide receiver. Mark Fletcher, an awesome running back. He's been there, but those are other guys who go to Heritage who Miami's going to want in on. So to me, it's less about the individual names and more about the overall issue recruiting that school. Because, again, we can go back year after year after previous year and have the same question. Cam, what's going on with insert recruiting players from American Heritage? It's more about the macro than the micro in this instance for me.
I apologize to everyone. When my phone went off earlier, I think I've explained this before. We've got a call-in system that goes through a board. I've got to call the call-in system through my phone. Therefore, anytime I turn on this audio board, my phone is automatically connected through the audio board. And I really don't want to turn off my phone in case there's some kind of emergency call from my child or something. But so I've turned off the phone. That being the case, yes, it just kind of automatically goes through. And we have had a rough tech day here at the Voice of College Football, but that has been the least of it. Lewis is telling me that I'm cursed. Lewis, I certainly hope that's a joke. And even if it's a joke, I'm not taking that. I'm extremely blessed. If my being cursed has to do with phones going off over our audio board, I'll take it. Falconer X, thank you so much. I think it's been a while since we've seen you, and we've missed the super sticker. Thank you so much for the contribution. As always, you know that, sir. Hurricane Logan's here as well. And from Hurricane Logan, we've got Mackenzie Milton fights with his girl over the vibration. Okay. I did have to start to read that, didn't I?
Yikes.
And I knew when I started the first Hurricane Logan, please, hey.
Yikes. Come on. That reminds me again of when I was doing shout outs at Miramar. So people would write some off color stuff and I would, be doing the play by play and I would take them and I would go and read them between. I'm going to read that one again for myself before I, So,
and something even told me that I knew better, but I still just did it. And I don't even know why. I just, I kind of thought without glancing at the whole thing, I thought, as soon as anyway.
All good. Logan, shame on you. You know better. Come on, bro.
Yes. Thought you loved my channel and wanted us to stay on.
That's what I'm saying. Come on, man.
In good standing here. Michael, thank you so much. Michael is the one to turn to class it up out of nowhere. Boom. Great content. Mark and Cam, hashtag like and subscribe. Go Canes. Thank you so much, Michael, with the suit and tie on, looking sharp.
Always.
All right. Thank you so much for those. And Hurricane Logan, and we know you. We love you, but let's keep those jabs for the backroom conversations. All right. Where are we? I got to say, and we'll go to Falconer X here in just a second. Maybe we've got a question. No, we've got support here, which is fabulous. We will always take that, even if you don't have comments or questions to make. But I looked up Earl Little because I thought, Earl Little, yes, Cleveland Browns, Earl Little. And he had a pretty, not an ridiculously great career, but he was in the league like 8 years, picked off 18 passes in his career. He played, he was on the field, he was a starter, he was a good player.
Yeah, absolutely. And in college as well. So, yeah.
Florida State contingent is here taking all sorts of jabs back and forth.
I would say the umbrage, probably what I said earlier, but it'd be like that.
Umbrage is a good word.
Yeah, thank you. Falcon Rice asked, who are the 3 players Miami must sign? Y'all know that I'm not big on must-get recruits. And you can just look back at that Earl Little segment because there's always an opportunity to recruit somebody else that's similar, even if it's not in the same year. But, like, if you wanted, like, 3 recruits that you want Miami to sign, fine, I'll take that one. Number 1, Shamar Stewart. Arguably one of the best players in America, 5-star defensive lineman, 6'5", 260 from Monsignor Pace. In Opelika, that's a program that's put a lot of guys into the Miami Hurricanes program. DeMarcus Van Dyke went to Pace. Quarterback, number 17, had a really strong arm. Stephen Morris went to Monsignor Pace. Some other guys went to Pace as well. And he's local. And again, this is the year of the defensive end. So he's one of those elite guys, but I would say put him towards or at the top of the list just because of his size. Now, he's a guy at 6'5", 260. You know, hey, he's a couple cheeseburgers and cheesecakes away from 280, where if you move him inside, you're really cooking with fish grease. But, okay, fine, you want to leave him outside. Even as a bigger defensive end, I'm with that as well. So he would be 1. 2, I would say I need insert blue chip offensive lineman here. So whether that's Malik Agbo from Washington State, whether that's Julian Armella, whether that's the hood kid, the 6'9", 370 kid from Nashville, I need one of those. I need some real beef on the offensive line as well. So I would say that would be 1 and 2. On top of that, if I'm looking for a third really high-end player that I would like, in for a dime, in for a dollar, Jaleel Skinner, the number 1 tight end in America from Greer, South Carolina. You know, Miami's in his top 5. Florida thought that they had a really good chance at him, but he dropped them, moving from his top 8 to top 5. And Miami's tight end you know, I know if you're looking at raw number, Notre Dame and Iowa have had a higher number of tight ends drafted with way lower impact on the game than Miami.
Iowa?
Yeah.
They've been doing pretty well.
They've been doing really well. But I'm still saying I'm taking Miami
Noah
over them.
Fant, Luke Hawkinson's playing well. TJ Hawkinson and George Kittle.
Yeah.
They're on a pretty good roll.
They are. I'm still taking Miami. And all that we've done over the course of time. Because if you go back a little bit for them, past those guys, you got Dallas Clark, who's kind of a tweener.
Oh, Dallas Clark.
But he was really good. Yes. But that's 4. You know what I mean? Like, even guys who are busting based upon their draft position, i.e. like David Njoku, I'm still taking David Njoku. You know, you just have Brevin Jordan. He's about to go to the league and do numbers. You got Jimmy Graham, who's still doing numbers. You had, Greg Olsen. And, I mean, look, there's more. I'm picking Miami if it's me. And again, even with – and so beyond those 4 for Iowa, the other guys are just like glorified extended offensive tackles who block. You know what I mean? Notre Dame, they got some guys who are decent in the league and everything. But again, they're bodies. They're not game changers. So for me, it's still going to be Miami. So with that as something that we can push, with Skinner, I would love to see him come to Miami, back up, him on top of what we got last year in terms of tight ends, namely Elijah Arroyo at the top of that class, also Khalil Brantley, but I think Arroyo is the higher potential prospect. Then you bring, in, and that's behind Dominic Mammarelli, who's more of a blocker than a receiver, but still a good program player and things like that. But then you bring in Skinner, who's from Greer, South Carolina. That's a good step forward. So, I mean, those are just 3 of the names on the board, but I would say start there and trickle on down if that's me. Derek King, so that's me, period, in that conversation. Mike Williams, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate that. Always all you guys coming in with the super chats and with the questions. So super chat question from Mike Williams. Is there any new info on Derek King's process? Everybody says that he's going to be ready for day one of camp. So I believe that he's going to be ready for day one of camp. He's going around, he's posting videos of him working out in the weight room, on the field and everything, full go, it looks like. There was another video of him throwing the other day. And again, not just standing in one spot. Like, you see quarterbacks and they get injured and they're on the sidelines and they don't move. And it's just, okay, I throw because I got this arm that still works, and then throw it to somebody else and they hand it back to me. And then, but like, no, he's still rolling out. He's moving. He's doing all the things, mocking through the zone read or the RPO handoff action in there and everything. So all indications are that he's going to be full go for camp and the opener. So unless or until I see or hear something different, that's what I've been operating on. What I've been operating with is that Derek King's going to be there.
Cam Underwood, State of the U. Of course, Miami football talk here every Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time.
John. Yeah, South Carolina. I have a friend who's from South Carolina. A couple friends, actually. One of them did one of his degrees at Clemson, ironically enough. Dirty David is also from South Carolina. And my boy Dave Bush. Dave Bush is from South Carolina. And Dave Bush used to go back to South Carolina in undergrad every week, almost. And so he would have us sign in for him in music history junior year because it was a double long classroom. So he'd be like, Professor Barr, you didn't see him come in the back door? Like, yeah, because it's 2 classrooms wide or whatever. And like one time we had like a pop-up test. And so we're calling like, yo, hey, Dave, where you at, bro? Dave, he's like, north of Jacksonville? What do you mean? Like, I'm on 95. I'm out of here. I'm like, I guess we got a test right now in music history, or musicology, and we have choir next period. And I don't know what Dr. Scheibe is going to say that you're skipping, but hey, enjoy your trip home this weekend.
Okay, I've got no response to any of that. It was entertaining, but I could not follow it.
That was my South Carolina moment.
Now, anytime a discussion like what was brought up just a second ago about tight end U, let's say, is brought up, man, I would love to be able to snap my fingers and have every piece of information I could possibly want at my disposal, meaning, okay, who's got the most first round NFL draft picks? Who has the most NFL draft picks? Who has the most in the first 3 rounds? Who has the most? I want everybody's statistics, both in college and the NFL. I want to be able to measure it up, look at it. But I was not stating that Iowa has taken over as tight end U. I was just making a statement that they're on a good run right now, like after 2010, like in the last 10 years, they're on a nice run. But if we're considering modern football to be, since the 70s, maybe the last 4 decades, Greg Olsen, Jimmy Graham, Jeremy Shockey, Kellen Winslow Jr., oh my goodness, David Njoku, Clive Walford, Chris Herndon, Bubba Franks,
Asante Cleveland,
Jeremy Shockey, if I didn't say,
at
the time of this article, I just looked up at this Bleacher Report, and it looks like it's a few years old at least. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Graham and Greg Olsen were 6th and 8th all time in NFL yardage for tight ends.
Yeah,
so they're probably both in the top 5.
Right. So I'm saying, if you are somebody like the Skinner kid from Greer, South Carolina, come on down to South Beach, be the next one, be a first-round draft pick, and keep it moving. That's all I'm saying. That would be my recruiting pitch, or one of my recruiting pitches to that gentleman. Which would not work on everybody, because Caden Helms from Nebraska was talking about last week how he didn't want to go to a school that had a legacy of great tight ends. He wants to be the first and only. De'Aaron Irish, no, there's not as many as Miami. And I'm not saying that there are not good tight ends from Notre Dame. I did not say that.
Zach Ertz. Okay. Was he? Yeah, Zach Ertz is really good.
The Rudolph kid went to the Vikings.
Yeah, the Vikings.
Okay. All right.
Travis Rudolph.
No, not Travis. He went to Florida State.
Travis, he's Florida State, yeah. Jake Rudolph.
Randolph? Is it Randolph?
No, it's Rudolph. You got that right. He's a really good player.
Yeah.
I should know his first name. I thought it was Jake Rudolph, whoever.
But
Yes,
yeah,
good player. Good player in the NFL. I bet he's catching 35, 40 passes a year.
probably a little bit more.
Player,
But
but
I mean,
definitely-
like, but that's a couple. That's what I'm saying. And the rest of those guys from Notre Dame who
what are we missing?
who've been
Well, if you want to go way back, Dave Caspers, Kyle Rudolph.
Kyle Rudolph. There we go. But I
Dave,
mean,
Dave Casper's an all-time great, and so is Mark Bavaro. But we're going back to
I
the
didn't know
70s
Bavaro
and
went
80s.
there. Okay, cool. But like again, the other tight ends from Notre Dame are guys. They're JAG, just a guy, and that's fine. You can be on an NFL roster for 8 or 10 years, get your pension and everything. But like, if we're talking about game changers, we're talking about all the like compare again the list from Notre Dame and the list from Miami, bro. They're not the same. Y'all are not like us like that. Not at that position. Now, if you want to talk about offensive linemen, you got something. Even though Miami has a lot of offensive linemen, Notre Dame, okay, you can even go and say, okay, there's more, but like, no, y'all are not like that. And again, I know that on the raw number, yes, you've had lots of guys drafted. What round do they get drafted in, and what do they do in the league? Just some guys, not the same, buddy.
Yeah, Dave Caspers, if he's not in the Hall of Fame, he's like borderline Hall of Famer. Mark Bavaro was a dominant player in the NFL. Kyle Rudolph actually has 47 career touchdowns. And again, I don't know how old this article is, but he was 16th all time in NFL tight end touchdowns at the time. Anthony Fasano, Tyler Eifert's a decent player.
Okay. Both of those guys are decent players.
John Carlson. Offensive line, I never hear that one discussed because that's different. It's the most difficult to quantify for one thing because there are no statistics. But offensive line, I think that would be the biggest grab bag of programs that could compete for that title. Like I would say, if we're going to start that conversation, we need to throw in like USC and Ohio State and Michigan and Notre Dame and Miami and Alabama. And like there's about 8 schools that you could start. Wisconsin.
Well, I was just saying, because he obviously took exception to the fact of me saying that Miami has more and better tight ends in the NFL than does Notre Dame. I was just saying that if you want to talk about offensive linemen, I would give that to Notre Dame as having probably more dynamism at that position than Miami in terms of offensive linemen recently in the NFL. That was just off the top of my head. But hey.
All right. So, Cam, I bring you to the question that I posed off the top of the hour. So again, to put this into context for everyone out there, we had this conversation on the Florida State show last night, and I came up with the question, if I could have the answer to one question to give me the best read on how the season went for that particular football team, I would come up with this question and answer. And for Florida State, it was, I wanted to know how many games Mackenzie Milton would start and finish. And I think my second question would be, how many touchdowns did he throw for the season? So for Miami, do you think there would be one thing beyond the obvious, something that's going to tell you the answer, some type of fact or statistic that would give you the best read on the 21 season?
In general, efficiency, if you want me to boil that down, yes, I know that there's all the advanced statistics. Yes, I know that there's more than just yards and points that we use to kind of understand what happens on the football field. But along those lines, I'm going to use a kind of traditional statistic as the identifying factor for me. Offensive and defensive third down conversion percentage. Because Miami struggled on offense, and then in games where we've lost, we've struggled on defense, getting people off of the field. So if I would know now, Miami converted 47% of our third downs on offense and allowed 19% on defense, or whatever the numbers were. I think that knowledge today, July 15th, would give me a very good logical foundation to understand what probably would happen in this season. Or if we're saying, if I knew now, I could probably look at it and say, reasonably well how the season went. And yes, I know that there's going to be other things. There's going to be injuries. There's going to be drop balls. There's going to be turnovers. And I get all that. Yeah. But again, I do like this thought experiment of if I can know one thing and have that inform me for the season, offensive and defensive third down conversion percentage. That would be a big, big one for me.
Who's the best head coach in the history of the program?
Best? It's tough because there's so many good ones to choose from. The argument can be easily made for Howard Schnellenberger because he's the architect who got us to this level.
I think there's three. For me, there's three.
Jimmy Johnson, obviously, would be another one. Dennis Erickson took over and he won a couple championships.
That's my three.
And Butch Davis, I think, is in that conversation as well because he built a monster. I think that, yeah, we've talked about it before, but I believe that we got shorted in 2000 from playing a national championship game, especially when, and I know that there are other considerations, a conversation about, yeah, we lost to Washington, they had one, but they picked a team that we beat to play for a national championship. I think that is a direct, and that was probably one of the better teams that did not win a championship. But we won the fight and the game against Florida that year. And then won the championship last year. But so the 2000 and 2001 teams were his construction. And coming off of those sanctions and everything, that was all Butch Davis. So, especially for what he did then. Now, obviously, he went to the Cleveland Browns and things didn't go well. But in his time at Miami, I would put him as the number 4 in that conversation. Howard Schnellenberger, Jimmy Johnson, Dennis Erickson, Butch Davis. That would be my top 4.
That's why I like the thinking man's conversation to this, because I think national championships are overrated. I discredit them slightly because I think almost every year that you can pick out, especially pre-playoff, you can say, well, this team had just as good a resume as this team, and they weren't included. I'm big on doing that. I posted videos where I like dissecting all that, and that would be one of the years where I would say, I would say, I'm replacing Washington with Florida State with Miami, but out of the 3 that had a claim, Florida State had the weakest claim, and they're the ones that got the opportunity. That's
what I'm saying. And I get that was a Lifetime Achievement Award for Bobby Bowden. I get that was like the brand legacy of Florida State because it was right at the end of their run after they had all those years in the top 5 and everything. It's a household name, Florida State. So fine, we're going to go with the biggest brand at the time, even though I believe that U was a stronger brand, but in terms of football, that was the more household name, and everything, but they were the worst team of the 3. And I mean, okay, I won't say the worst team because that was a really, really damn good team, and Miami went down to the wire against them. But like you said, they did have the weakest claim to make it to the championship game of any of those teams in that conversation that year. So yeah, and also to your point about national championships being overrated, notice I did not mention Larry Coker, who coached the best college football team in history. He's not. So yeah, it would be, and I think that you have a good case of any of those guys. Schnellenberger won 1, Johnson won 1, Erickson won 2 national championships. Butch Davis didn't win any, but should have won 1 in 2000. We would have killed Oklahoma that year. My God. And then had the foundation for that team that was the greatest college football team of all time. Of those 4, there is a strong argument or case for any and all. Maybe it's my old-fashioned nature. Maybe it is maybe it's just my mentality, but I got to go with Howard, man, because without him, we are not who we are as a program. And I think that the legacy that the Hurricanes have had since his tenure informs his greatness as a coach to begin Miami on this path. And again, there are solid arguments for the other 3, but for me, myself personally, Howard Schnellenberger, who again should be in the College Football Hall of Fame, and they did wrong by not putting him in when he was alive. They need to do it posthumously because it's baloney that he's not.
I'm a numbers guy, and that's why you have to look way past the numbers, and you have to understand the numbers and understand how the numbers were accumulated and under what conditions. Jimmy Johnson is a great all-time coach on both levels, but the program was in place when he received it. He did amazing things with it and dominated, but Howard Schnellenberger had nothing. He laid the groundwork for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And we're going to get to the super chat question. Then I've got a follow-up to that one.
Okay.
I will say this about the Oklahoma-Miami mythical national championship game of 2000. I agree with you. If I look at personnel, I look at a scrappy Oklahoma team with a defense and a conservative offense and all the things that we could add up versus this Miami pro team. And it looks like a mismatch, a blowout. But I point to two things here. I point to what happened 7 years earlier in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama, where we saw a similar type matchup. And I also think, again, to size up the talent, there's no comparison. But if Florida State was right neck and neck with Miami, and they played a down to the wire game, and Florida State played Oklahoma and was confused and frustrated and shut out, they didn't score a point offensively in that game.
Sure didn't.
But
I think we were rolling though in a different way than Florida State was at that point in the season. We were rolling. We were just, we took that loss early at Washington. I was a freshman that year, had a couple friends on that team. One of my friends was one of the traveling cheerleaders. Shout out to Ian. And he was like, that's the loudest place I've ever been in. That stadium that day at Washington. It was great. For them, bad for us that we lost. But after that, we were just on a different kind of a mission, on a different kind of a role. So I know that, we played a tight game when Florida State and we played. But we weren't the same at that point at the end of the season. That was my point. But I see where you're coming from.
So for anybody out there that enjoys these kind of debates concerning college football history, disputed national championships, likes to see the scores compared, the results, the personnel on the field, the scenarios, wants to see maybe how it would have played out in a different era under a different playoff format or BCS format, you'll be excited about a project that I'm working on that I will tell you about at some point. All right, we got Dwayne Baker. Thank you so much for the super chat, Dwayne. Appreciate that so much. Dwayne Baker 305. Seems like the offense has been force-feeding Mark Pope, hoping that he blows up. After seeing the spring game, I suspect that trend will continue. I think it happens for him this year. Your thoughts?
I don't want to see him being force-fed anymore. Again, he and his high school teammate, D. Wiggins, had the highest drop rates of catchable balls in the ACC, if not the country last year, with 18.8 and 16.7% drop rates on catchable balls that hit their hands, that are there. Not contested catches, not diving catches or anything. Catchable passes are still hitting the ground. No, that's not. I don't want to see that anymore. And honestly, I hope that that Pope is somebody from the starting lineup needs a rest, rotation kind of a guy, if anything. I think that D. Wiggins can get off against Florida State because they have not figured out how to cover that man on a post pattern since 2017, apparently. So I'm fine with D. Wiggins getting out there and running a couple post routes up top, against Florida State. I'm good with that. But, Mark Pope, no, I definitely am not force-feeding him. And I definitely don't want to see it this year. We got Charleston Rambo. You got Mike Harley, who could potentially leave as the all-time leader in receptions and yards for the Miami Hurricanes. You got Keyshawn Smith, my guy, and I've been talking to you about him since he signed and showed up the last day that players could show up for spring semester last year. And they just posted a thing from him doing workouts, jumping out of the gym. I don't even know how high his vertical was because he hit the top of the thing and it was the ground level looking up measurement and everything. But those are guys who need to play in front of Pope. Wiggins has more size than Pope, who's listed at 6 feet and he's not. And even I would like to see some of these other young guys who are on the roster, guys who in this recruiting class, guys in last year's recruiting class. Michael Redding III looks like a grown man at 6'2", 195 pounds with bowling balls for muscles and everything. I would rather you put him out there. You know what I mean? I would even rather that you went 2 wide and 2 tight than going 4 wide and having Pope out there getting all those kind of snaps. That's just where I am with it, because you've shown and proved who you are, and force feeding you the ball, nah, like, no, that's not it. It's not. No, that's not a thing that I need or want to see. So could he have a role on this team? Sure. It's going to be a middle, bottom of the rotation player. That's what it is. And I think that obviously before some guys got here for spring, and with a couple injuries and things like that, yeah, and everybody's going to play in the spring game. You're going first, second, third, fourth teams. I get that. But force feeding him as like the number one focal point of the offense, like he were Amon Richards as a freshman, no, absolutely not. Give him, I mean, if Mark Pope sees more, okay, across 14 games, 14 times 3 is 42. 14 times 4 is 56. So if you're saying split the difference between 42 and 56 is going to be 50? 49?
To be exact. Yep.
I would like to see him with about 49 targets then, maximum. 3.5 times a game, the ball goes his way. Could that be 7 times in one game and 0 times in another game? Cool, but I don't want to see us. And actually, that's a lot. Yeah, I'm on the 42-ish. Like through a 14-game season, throw him the ball 3 times. And whatever happens, happens. Because I'm going to take those targets and those throws, and I'm going to put them towards other people. Will Mallory, Charleston Rambo, Mike Harley, Keyshawn Smith, Xavier Restrepo, even another one of the young kids who's stepping up. You know, maybe like I said, I didn't even get to Elijah Arroyo, didn't even get to Larry Hodges at tight end, didn't even get to any of the running backs out of the backfield who can get swing passes, Jalen Knighton, Donald Chaney Jr., Cam Harris. If you want to play 2 of the freshmen, the 2 freshmen at running back and maybe throw them the ball out the backfield, Cody Brown and Thad Franklin, I'm looking all kinds of other places. So I would say in that 35 to 42 range for targets for Pope, that's more than enough. But, and that's where I sit right now. But if for some reason, and I hope that this is not the case, but if for some reason the coaching staff loses their brains and says, hey, we're going to start Pope in the opener, and we're going to start him in the second and third and fourth week, and he does decent numbers, then fine, you've earned your way into that. But me right now, no, absolutely not. I'm sorry. And I had as high expectations and hopes for him as anybody. Nah, you've shown and proved who you are. You're on the 2 to 3 targets per week rotation off the bench. You might get 20 or 30 snaps. Don't cry about it. Don't get bitter, get better, and move on.
So if we see Mark Pope in the starting lineup against Alabama, we conclude one of a few things. We can either conclude that that's the coaching staff's approach, that he's the starter, he's kept his job for whatever reason, he's done just enough, or he somehow turned the light on, turned the switch, and found it in August camp and truly won the job. Or the unfortunate point would be that he's the same Mark Pope, but everybody else underachieved, which is highly unlikely that many wide receivers with that much talent would not, that 2 or 3 would not show up and show that they could contribute right away.
Yeah, but, it's a thing where we are in a position that we've been in the past at other positions where we're throwing numbers at the problem because we don't have answers there. So we have to have these extra numbers, inflated numbers on the scholarship list for wide receivers. And the other option is just straight seniority. And this staff for years, even going back to Mark Richt and Al Golden before him, have been heavy on, well, he's the most senior guy on the roster, so he needs to play. That's not always the case. You know what I mean? And I get that this is a people business. You know what I mean? So, like, the individual matters. But early on, the decision was made, Amon Richards is starting. It didn't take no 6, 7, 8 games. That was like off the bench game 1, off the bench, but playing the most snaps game 2, game 3. Like, that's it. You know what I mean? It didn't take all this time, even on the roster where other guys were still being played because of their seniority, which, again, we've seen so much at Miami in the past that is a very, very valid reason that Mark Pope could start, not one that I would like to see, but one that has been employed for other people playing over more talented guys at their positions, even other guys who are still in the roster at other positions currently, today, right now.
I think you'll be able to understand the thought process that I'm going to present right now, that I think most educators and coaches, being educators to a certain extent, fall into this place. That if you have somebody, let's say it's not Mark Pope per se, and I don't know what kind of citizen he's been on the team and in the program. We'll put that aside. We'll just say this is a generic situation that happens all over the place in college football. But let's say you've got a linebacker who's a good player. He's a solid player. He's not spectacular. He gets the job done. But you have people behind him that are more talented. And maybe they're starting to make plays and starting to really push him. But, man, this guy's a senior at this point. He's done all the right things. Mm-hmm. He's put in the blood, the sweat, the tears, and he's really good. He's not detracting from what you do, but you want to win a championship, and you got players that are just nipping at his heels that, again, the ceiling's so much higher for them. I think there's something in all of us that are hopefully decent people that see all the investment that this individual's put into their career, and there's a rooting factor. These guys build up relationships. They recruited them. They've seen them through the process. That you want to root for that person. Therefore, you're going to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, to a point. But again, we've seen that even last year, because he has a number on the roster that is between 52 and 54, and he played linebacker, and he now plays defensive end, and that was the very scenario. So, like, we've seen that, but at some point, I wish you well, and, I love your contributions to this program, but we got somebody else who is better for what we need on this field. And again, that's what the conversation always has been for me. Again, I wish no ill will to any person on our roster. But football is a business, and we know that, and college football is about winning games. And with all due respect, I'm looking for people who can do that job, who have that kind of performance and potential and athleticism and ability. So if I've been critical of people in our program, that's what is coming from. Not about them as people. I don't care about them as people. As long as they're not doing something, where you had somebody leave school because of a sexual assault allegation, things like that. Yes, of course. But insofar as like they're just like a normal college student, I don't think about them. I don't care what they do like in the classroom. Like, did they pass? Sure. Are they a decent enough citizen? But I'm not like, oh, I wish ill will on you and I hope that you stub your toe and No, you're just not good enough at football. So I need somebody who's better at football. That's what the point of conversation is. And, that is, I think, where we are. And again, Zach McLeod was at linebacker, and that was the thing. And now he's at defensive end because of something along those lines. So, yeah, I'm looking for people who can play the game and play the game to the level that it needs to be played so the Miami Hurricanes can win. That's what it's about.
And not for anyone to misconstrue what I'm saying. I was not saying that person, that particular player who was average, should not be sent to the second team in favor of the more talented player that's going to help you win games. I'm just saying that you can understand that innate care for that individual, to root for them and want them to succeed and to try to honor their contribution.
No, absolutely. But in Miami's case, that player has not been relegated to second team in the support of that. And that's where the issue comes in, because you can still be a great team player. You can still be, and again, the old NCAA commercials, 90% of athletes go pro in something other than sport. And look, man, I know that you want to go pro in sports, but like you're maybe going to go pro in something else. And this other monster behind you is a better football player. So like, it is what it is. That's where, guys are talking about Clinton Portis is like, yo, I'm not coming off the field because I know that Willis McGahee and Frank Gore are behind me. You famously had Reggie Wayne who said, look, I played through a couple injuries my senior year because Andre Johnson was behind me. And I knew when he got on the field, that was it. And I get it. But you just can't, and that's been a thing where lesser talented guys with substandard performance have been left at a higher roster depth chart level than other guys behind them, even currently on this team. And that's been the big issue for me. hopefully going to JP, because I know that he's watching, one of our guys, Juice from 300. He's written a couple pieces for us at State of the U. Waiting for your next piece, JP. Holla at me. But he asked me a question on Twitter because he was taking a screenshot and saying I was unfocused because I wasn't looking directly into the camera. So I'm looking right at you, JP. Hopefully this will not play itself out to be true, the same kind of seniority over anything. Depth chart management with Avante Williams, JP's favorite player, because everything coming out of camp, practice, everything is Avante Williams is that guy. He's making plays. He's the prototype at safety, speed, physicality, instincts, all of everything that you want, right? So why would we wait 7-8 games before we start him? Start him in the opener. He's a second-year true. He's a super freshman, so he's not young. He's not a true freshman or anything. He had the best performance in the secondary in the spring game. You can put him next to Bubba Bolden, and now you can cover 2/3 of the earth with them two back there because they got speed and range, and you got hitting ability. You got demonstrated, again, second team ACC, all ACC with Bubba Bolden. You got all the potential in the world in Avante Williams. Hopefully, this staff sees that and says, hey, we've already moved Amari Carter down to the box. Okay, so he's not even at safety anymore to take some of those snaps. So then go with the guy who has the ability and the talent, even without the experience factor there. And hopefully the roster management goes to that way, because I would like to see Avante Williams start also. So that goes towards JP's question, which kind of folded into the conversation about seniority over everything. And again, to shout out The Wire, David Simon's seminal television show, the best television show in the history of television, and the second season, which is really good. And it tells me a lot about you if you don't like the second season of The Wire, because that just means you're not as smart as you think that you are, because you missed a lot. And I get that it's different going from the streets to the docks, but just trust me. Watch it again. It's really great. But in that season, they're talking about the longshoremen and getting hours at the dock to actually make money, and goes, yeah, whatever, blah, they're talking about it. And one character goes, yeah, seniority is great. And one of the younger characters who got screwed because he didn't get a shift that day, he goes, yeah, except when you ain't senior. And it's the same thing with the Miami Hurricanes. Seniority is great if you have Shaq Quarterman as a senior. If you have Brad Kaya, who's the only quarterback on the roster at the time who's Miami caliber, right? If you have those guys, if you have Ed Reed as a senior, you got Matt Walters as a senior, you got Chris Campbell as a senior who goes to the league. He gets drafted or undrafted, but he goes to the league. And he was the reason that DJ Williams played fullback his freshman year, right? Who? I don't even remember that name. Go look it up. That's why DJ Williams, #1 recruit in America, played fullback to get him on the field before even coming over to linebacker, which everybody knew was his best and future position because it would be a first-round draft pick, right? If you got those guys at the top, seniority is great. But then if you have the guys at the top of the roster who are not necessarily that great, seniority is great, except for if you ain't senior, you got guys like Avante Williams sitting on the bench. If you would have had Amon Richards sitting on the bench behind some seniors and some upperclassmen that year, that would have been a problem. Because why? That man goes on to break records. You know what I mean? So it's this balancing act, and hopefully seniority is not the single source factor for the decision of who plays, especially in positions like Keyshawn Smith, who I've talked about, positions or guys like Avante Williams, like I've talked about. And then probably a corner as well, but yeah, we just got to not have seniority be the only factor.
We've got Cam on overtime right now, but we got 2 super chats. If you can hang out to knock these out, and I will quickly explain, as Cam did, why I'm not looking directly at the camera is because I have purchased a new camera. Therefore, before I would look directly at my guest, meaning Cam right on the webcam right at him, and everything was right there. Now I've got a camera up here and Cam's down here. So I can fake it. I can be the professional and fake it the whole time, but it's just uncomfortable to do that, right, knowing that Cam's down here. Right. I did that the first couple of days, and I was like, I'm not doing that like every day. Right. All right, here we go. We've got Falconer.
Sorry, before Falconer, real quick, the last question. Daughtry Richardson, offensive tackle from Miami Central High School. He is a guy who's to the middle bottom of the offensive line board. For me, it's him and Leighton Nelson from Orlando Boone High School. Pretty much everybody's saying, look, one of those two guys, there's a spot for one, not both. They're that 6'4", 6'5", 270 or 260 to 275 range, both of them. Could play tackle, maybe slide inside to guard, one of those two. it's probably Miami, Florida State battle for Richardson at this point. But yeah, it's really looking like one or the other of them. Personally, just because he's more local, I would prefer Richardson, I think. But it's not a show-stopping kind of a player. That's kind of a depth-building, rounding out the class kind of a player. But we need those guys as well who could maybe be a couple years down the road before they really hit the field. Again, I've said it a couple times. John Feliciano goes to the league. He was 3 years before he played, coming from Davie Western. Danny Isadora from Cypress Bay High School in Weston, same thing. He ended up his last year as second or third team All-ACC, but he didn't play a meaningful snap until 3 and 4 years into the program. And maybe that could be, with Dr. Richardson as well. I don't think he's a day one or day two guy, but he's on the board. Sorry about that. Continue.
Richardson had a busy June. He visited Arizona State, Florida State, Kentucky, Miami, and Missouri. 45th rated offensive tackle in the country, top 66 player in Florida, according to the 247 Sports Composite. All right, Falconer ERX. How much damage has all the hate from SI, ESPN, ABC, NCAA, and secret investigations done to the University of Miami? Proven facts.
Some. For those who are, Miami's a big us against the world city. It's an us against the world school. The football program is definitely us against the world. We all we got. Everybody's not going to love us. That's where I came up with the hashtag Let's Be Jerks years ago when evaluating potential head coaching prospects. I wrote about Lane Kiffin and said, hey, let's lean into it. I'll be the bad guy. You don't got to like me, but I'm going to run the score. Jimmy Johnson, you had to like it. But we're going to run the score. We're going to run our offense. Why should our guys not pass the ball? Because they work as hard in practice and do it. Okay, I'm fine with that. There is an inordinate amount of hate because Miami, over the course of, it's extended now, it's 40-something years, is a microwave dynasty compared to these teams. Michigan, where I'm from, y'all know that, the leaders and best. Notre Dame, USC. You can even go to Arkansas, who had a strong history before in football even. Texas, Minnesota won a national championship before. You can look at all these teams, these programs, these legacy programs that have been for a long time. Miami's not that. Miami's, within a couple generations and just like, hey, in the 80s, woo, here we go. And so it really upset the apple cart. It changed the stratosphere of college football with Miami becoming the iconic program that we are. So there's some people who still just don't like that. And over the course of time, SI has had a negative lean against Miami. Obviously, there's the iconic why Miami should drop or be forced to close the football program cover, or why the University of Miami should drop football, I believe it said. That iconic SI poster or cover. Everybody knows that one. ESPN, I'm not going to say that necessarily because they gave us some of the best propaganda in a while with the U and the U part 2. I'm with it. Even in the how to get away with copyright infringement 30 for 30 on Notre Dame, Miami was a starring figure. Even if you look at some of the other ones, Miami was a starring figure. So ESPN, I don't necessarily see that. ABC is the parent company for ESPN, so kind of same. The other one for me would be Yahoo Sports with that his piece from Charles Robinson, who, yes, did his job as a journalist, but then anytime anything else pulls up, and it's still, it's like, well, Miami fans are still in my mentions. You singled us out and literally picked up a pebble or a fleck of sand off the beach, but ignored the rest of the beach. And anytime anything else on the beach happens, you're like, oh, well, I was right that one time. Cool, bro. Whatever. That's one where I would say, yeah, that's been negative over the course of time. And then the NCAA themselves, my God, because especially based upon that one that Charles Robinson had, in 2009 with that article, that investigation was such bullshit. And you could go and read all the malfeasance that they did, all the illegal things that they did. So there were illegal things and then things that ran counter to their bylaws. So they weren't necessarily illegal, but they went against the bylaws of the NCAA. So they violated their own terms and policies. And then they had things that were blatantly and verifiably illegal as well. So are there times that, like, yeah, there's been some negativity from the outside towards the program in a variety of ways, whether it's narrative in terms of the media or whether it's tangible in terms of NCAA and investigations and, trying to get their investigation because they want to have because if Miami would have gotten the death penalty for 09, people still know about the SMU stuff. But if you talk about being a big game hunter and you got an empty wall behind you like this and you're trying to mount some logo or some head on we made an example of this school that will never be forgotten and you could have put an orange and green U up there, the NCAA, you wouldn't have been able to tell them nothing. Their entire existence would have been verified and solidified because of that one thing. So, yeah, there has been outside stuff. I don't know tangibly how damaging that's been to the football program. The school, we're on another $1 billion fundraising campaign. Donna Shalala completed $2 billion fundraising campaigns when she was university president. I know that there's all kinds of other stuff that is ongoing. The university is still the highest ranked academic institution in the state of Florida, which I love, and it makes my degree even more valuable than it already was. So there have been some negative things for the football program that have not necessarily hit the university as a whole. So I'm not exactly 100% sure how much that has been a factor for why recruits went elsewhere. If you want to see, okay, what's the actual fallout? Did they know about the Charles Robinson piece and they chose to go somewhere else? Did they know about if there is a direct kind of situation with that? Yeah, maybe. So it's tough to say, but it would be hard to think that over the course of time with so much negativity from the outside that there was no impact on the program, but just how much, I can't really tell.
Interesting. We could do a whole hour plus on just that topic right there.
Yes, could. Not going to because it's already 8:19, but
no.
Yes.
Maurice Howard. Cam, do you believe in this staff enough to say that if they stay together, our player development problem will be solved?
I better, right? At this point, it's still to be determined. I think that we're in a good spot in several spots. So I'll run down the list then. Quarterbacks / offensive coordinator, Rhett Lashley. Yes, unequivocally, 100%. Eric Hickson at running back. Not a big personality, not somebody who does lots of interviews or things like that. A real kind of quiet, silent assassin, but really good at his job. Look at the recruiting. Look at the room that he's built, which is elite. It's 5 guys: Cam Harris, Jalen Knighton, Donald Chaney Jr., Thad Franklin, and Chad Brown. You're hard-pressed to find a 5-man room that's much better than that. It's definitely in the top tier of running back rooms in America. Yes, and guys are getting better and playing better. Yes, I'm there with that. So that's 2. Wide receivers. Rob Likens has multiple first-round draft picks from Arizona State. He's been offensive coordinator other places. He's developed guys. We've seen guys, hopefully on this roster, develop, whether it's Mark Pope and D. Wiggins that we've talked about before, whether they move forward or other guys progress over them because, hey, that is also a sign of development. Everybody's not necessarily going to be a pro. Cool. I'm good with him. Stephen Field at tight ends coach, that's my guy. That's my man, 50 grand, ever since he was the head coach of Miami Northwestern. They ran him out of town for one bad season that really wasn't even – he was the head coach and anything, but there were systemic issues at Miami Northwestern that were bigger than him there. But look at the recruiting, look at the performance of tight end. Absolutely. Garen Justice at offensive line coach, former offensive coordinator, former head coach at lower level, great developer when he was at UNLV. Seems to be doing a great job here as well. Yes. So on offense, boom, 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 boom. Defense, Manny Diaz as the defensive coordinator, yes. As the linebackers coach, no. So between him and Aristide, who's new, and Packy, who's returning, That's where my real area of concern lies, of what's going on at linebacker in terms of recruiting and development, because we've had one good recruiting class at linebacker since Manny Diaz got here. And that was the first one, Shaq Quarterman, Zach McLeod, and Michael Pinckney. Even with getting names that we wanted at linebacker, nobody has had the kind of performance of those guys. I'm not even saying that every recruit has to be Shaq Quarterman, a 4-year senior starter. Everybody's not going to be Shaq Quarterman, but it ain't been nobody who's even in the same atmosphere, universe as those guys. And it's really just Pinckney and Quarterman, because McLeod, you know what I mean? So you had one really good class at linebacker and nothing since then. You have multiple guys who can recruit and develop potentially that position. That's a question mark for me. Defensive line, we got Jess Simpson back, proven developer. You know, Buford High School, Atlanta Falcons assistant DL coach. He was here before, left and went back to the NFL, came back here. That's a guy I'm not worried about, especially in terms of development. Bam, good. DeMarcus Van Dyke at cornerback, the jury's out only because he's not done it at this level, but I'm hopeful for him that in the switch. So DeMarcus Van Dyke was off-field recruiting staffer, and Mike Rump was the cornerbacks coach. Those two guys swap spots. So Mike Rump is off the field now, and DeMarcus Van Dyke is on the field. Again, I think that he can be good. I think that, you know, the situation is there for him to be a good developer, but we haven't seen it yet, so the jury's out. But I'm not going to say it's a major problem at this moment for him, like linebacker, because he's not been there as the cornerbacks have not necessarily developed the way that we wanted. Travaris Robinson is defensive backs coach. His resume speaks for itself. Absolutely 100%. I need to say nothing else about that. So I have a definite big no, I don't trust them / maybe if they start to turn it around, things could change at linebacker, whether that's Diaz as the linebackers coach, whether that's Packy, Aristide, either, all three, two, whatever you want to say. Whatever happens at the second level, a linebacker and striker, that's my major area of concern in terms of development. And then DeMarcus Van Dyke getting some mango seasons under his belt to prove that he can be a developer at cornerback on the side of Travaris Robinson, who's one of the most decorated and proven defensive backs coaches and developers in the game. So coming back to the question, do I think that if they stay together, that will solve the problem? With all the guys on offense, I believe yes. With two of the guys on defense, I believe. With two and a possible on defense, I believe yes. And then with two and the head coach also on defense, it's either no or it has to vastly have a 180-degree change. For me, I agree with a lot of people that Travis Williams going to UCF as their linebackers coach would have been a big solution for Miami's linebacker coaching problems. And so with Packy, and Packy is, we're getting to rubber meeting road for Packy for me. Packy is the one who, as an analyst before, came up with the striker position and saying we should leverage that to really unlock the defense. So he gets credit for that. So everything that's happened with that, whether it was Jaquan Johnson playing striker, whether it's Romeo Finley, Gilbert Frierson now, everything that happens with people playing striker is really because Packy really pushed that, came up and showed how that can be a benefit, and then Miami went to running that. So if you want to call it a 4-2-5 or whatever, but using that hybrid safety outside backer and leveraging that more than three linebackers at the second level, that was his brainchild. So that's been good for Miami. Also, since he's from and coached in Texas and played in Texas, we've gotten a couple of guys from Texas to take some visits out here. Even gotten a couple guys assigned, like a Corey Flagg, a couple other guys. Cameron Williams ended up committing somewhere else. Offensive lineman Cameron Williams, not the defensive end who's on the roster of the same name, but he's from Texas. Bear Alexander comes out from Texas. There was another 5-star defensive tackle when Packy first got promoted to position coach who visited, signed elsewhere. But so you're getting some traffic, but not much traction of guys from that area as well. So something got to shake. So either your recruiting has to pick up or your development and their performance on the field has to pick up. Because thank you for the intellectual property, that IP of, hey, well, let's run with the striker. But if we already know that position is going to be part of our defense and we know how to use it, with all due respect, I don't need you anymore. I can get somebody else to do the other things because I already know how to do it. You showed me how this works. So something got to shake for Packy. Aristide is new, so he gets a pass for the time being, but I want to see a positive impact from him coaching outside linebackers, strikers, but also being around the defense. Hopefully he will maybe have some through osmosis learning and teaching for the inside linebackers, they're called now, in the defense as well. So yeah, between Diaz as a linebackers coach, Packy, and really Packy because he's the tenured one. Aristide, I want to see it, but I'm not going to put this all on you in your first year. That's really where the question marks for me lie on the coaching staff. And then again, DeMarcus Van Dyke is a developer just because we've not seen him at this level. Not talking about him with his son, who's like 6 years old now playing defensive back. Yeah, you'll develop him over the course of a long time. Like, yeah, that's fine. But I want to see what you do with these guys at this level. So that's my read on if they say, and again, if all these guys stay together and if they move forward, then I think it's possible. But again, that's where I'm looking. Packy, Diaz as linebackers coach, Aristide, and Aristide and Van Dyke are in the same case of this is their first year on the field. I want to see. But it's really the one I'm really looking at is Packy because I need to see the linebackers get a little bit better. And also hopefully this season going in a positive way for Miami because transparently, I just don't think that Red Lashley is long for Coral Gables. And I want to take full advantage of him for as many years as he's going to be here because I don't think that he's going to be Brent Venables and forego other opportunities to stick around in Coral Gables. I just don't think that's going to happen. So hopefully we're able to strike while the iron's hot and he's here.
Excellent review of the coaching staff. My goodness. Falconer X again, do an hour on how Miami has been treated by the powers that be.
Oh, God. It's, it's funny because I have an interesting viewpoint. Of course, I'm me. Y'all know this. I tell stories. I'm a great storyteller. My students, when I taught, if we had to like extend in the classroom, it's like, oh, they're testing somewhere else. So I've gotten through my lesson. I'm like, cool, we're about to leave. But then, we got to be in here another half hour. They're like, hey, Underwood story time. Like, come on, like, let's go. And like, since they knew some of my stories, they'd be like, oh, so we have new freshmen now, right? So I remember when I was a freshman, you told us a story about this. So like, I'm a story person. Anyways, my freshman year at Miami was Thad Foote's last year before he retired. So my freshman gathering at the president's house was at Thad Foote's house. And then because I was in choir all my years, even before I was a music major, but in the top university chorale, the best group I'll ever be in, one of the best choirs around, we always did a little bit of outreach because, you got to make sure that you're good with administration. So we went over to the administration building and we, all 73 of us lined up the main central stairway. And then we serenaded and caroled and sung our songs and did an impromptu concert in the middle of the Ash administration building for President Foote. And at the end, we had a presentation for him. And thank you so much. We got this plaque from the School of Music and the University Chorale and all kinds of things like that. So I got to interact with him. And then Donna Shalala came in my sophomore year as university president, and she held that position until a few years ago when Julio Frank took over. So it's funny, again, I didn't know any of the Tad Foote stuff where he hated football and, but I saw it, and Tad Foote was also like 6'5". He was this massive dude. Like, they don't say this. Like, you walk in, he's this big, tall dude, and he had that perfectly coiffed gray hair and everything. And he looked like what, on the description on the first, the You documentary. He's like, oh, he's this fuddy-duddy and da-da-da-da. Yeah, but he was also this big physical dude. It was like 6'4", 6'5". So he's like, oh, this tall, thin dude or whatever. I didn't know how much he hated the football program at the time, how he had these spats with, Jimmy Johnson and all these kind of things. But having seen the administration change and working with both of them, it's easy to see how things went that way. And it was clear, obviously through Shalala's tenure, what she was really focused on. What she was focused on was fundraising. Like I said, she did 2 separate $1 billion capital fundraising campaigns when I was at Miami. And just continuing Foote's move to push the academic standing of the University of Miami forward. So hiring other professors, pushing for excellence in so many different ways, having professors do papers and research and things like that. So when you have the U.S. News and World Report rankings come out, eventually, right after, by the time I graduated and a little bit after, in 04 and 05 and 06, Miami was then and continues to be the highest rated academic institution in the state of Florida. And that was a push from Tad Foote. That was a push that was carried on by Donna Shalala. So with that as her focus, if I'm going to let some things slide over in the football program area, then they're going to slide because I'm raising these billions of dollars. I'm advancing, the scholarly aspects of the university, the standing herein, and all these kind of things. And football was not at the forefront for either of those people. So I say that to say I have firsthand sight of that transition and how both of them ran the school and the athletic department. And there's way more, and there are more people who are more learned about this than I, but that's the quick version of Tad Foote. What they said he wanted from the U documentary was true. He carried that through all the way through his tenure at Miami, which ended in the spring of 2001, the end of my freshman year. And then that baton was passed to Donna Shalala. And she did, again, some good things for the university, but there were some other things, especially in terms of the football program and athletics, that were intentionally let to go in whatever direction because it doesn't really matter because I'm really focused over here. So do y'all job and it'll be okay, but do not expect me to handhold you. Do not expect me to come down. Like athletics was almost Cinderella, the redheaded stepchild. I'm not coming to your shows. I'm not coming to your concerts. I'm not coming to your performances. I'm not coming to your parent-teacher night. I'm not coming to I got these other kids. I got these other things that I'm focused on. So I'm going to be over here. I'll make sure that you have the space. So there was a stadium to play in. There were practice facilities. There were dorms for all the players. I will make sure that you have the food. I will not deprive you of everything or anything, but I will not dote on you in any kind of a way. And I think that was the clear ethos and paradigm for at least the most two recent past presidents of the University of Miami.
Fascinating. And finally, we've got Frank the Legendary. What do you feel the impact would be if Miami does win the ACC?
It's going to be immediate in terms of recruiting because then you have proof positive again of concept. Hey, all these things that were deficient now we have. So we can go back or continue with all these guys that we're recruiting against or recruiting players. So all the players that we're recruiting, we can continue to connect with them and say, hey, come here and do this. It's going to be big for the individuals because I think that there's going to be some draft prospects for individual players that improve if that were to happen. I also think it's going to be big for coaches because then if that does happen, I would fully believe that this is Rhett Lash's last year, which I am leaning towards it being anyway. But if we win, that means we, did what we need to do on all sides of the ball, but especially on offense, then I'm pretty sure that, yeah, he's going to be out of there. But I think that it also sets Miami on a great path forward to continue to really assert a level of, I don't want to say dominance, but just like a level of dominance in the Coastal Division that we've not had. A standing at the top clearly that we know on roster talent and recruiting rankings is clear that Miami has. But in terms of performance on the field, I think that would be a major, major, major step forward. And even more so, that sets up Miami on a path for next year in the 2022 season to potentially then continue that, go back-to-back in the ACC Coastal at least, and then, see what happens in the ACC Championship game. But that would be a very, very good scenario for Miami to win the ACC because, again, that means you're getting the ACC Championship game and beating Clemson this year, which been a while. Been a while since we beat Clemson at all. We've obviously never won the ACC Championship, so we've seen that. But, if Manny Diaz is saying, I'm the guy, I have the vision, and what I've done to pivot from my initial staff and my initial way of doing things, this works. Listen to me, right? You do that and you have that proof. And I think that there's obviously trickle-down things in terms of visibility for the program. If you make it well, because if you win the ACC, you're in the playoff. If you do things like that, recruiting, moving forward, and then If you win the ACC and Rhett Lashley leaves, now who are you bringing in to replace him? That also puts you in a different stratosphere, I believe, of coach. To have somebody like Lashley again come over and say, cool, this guy came in here, turned things around. We won the ACC. He's on to a head coaching job. This is you if you come down and do 3 or 4 years with me. Because I'm just looking for the next guy to plug in because I got the system. I'm Manny Diaz. I know it. I figured it out. This team plays hard. This team does not quit. We recruit to an elite level, and I need another elite level coach like Coach Lashley to come in here and help me keep this thing running. What's up with it? What's up with it? You can probably get somebody off of their good job to come to Miami to do that. So there's a lot that would be positive for Miami for winning the ACC, which I think goes without saying, but I gave you 2 minutes where I was saying.
Voluminous and a stellar version of Miami Hurricanes Live here, number 164, courtesy Cam Underwood from State of the U. We will sign off right now, and Cam, I will ask you to just hang on for 5 seconds to talk to me right after we just say goodbye. We'll see you for OU Live, 2:30 Eastern, 1:30 Central tomorrow.